I want to tell you a story. Those 7 words have been a siren song for humans since practically the dawning of civilization. Across the ages, storytelling has been the foundation of our history, our communities, our shared experiences. Stories entertain us, they educate us, they inspire us. Stories can create hope, they can motivate change, they can spark revolution. And what do all the greatest stories have in common? Unforgettable characters. The characters you cheer for and the ones you root against. The characters you aspire to be and the ones you hope you never become. The characters that make you cringe. The characters you love. The characters you love to hate. Unforgettable characters and their stories have defined our society, the issues we grapple with, the problems we solve. And today, I want to talk to you about the story of cybersecurity. It's a story we've been writing for decades and one in which we are all characters. And frankly, it's a story at its crisis point. That point where the characters can change the trajectory of the story for better or for worse. And this particular story is brought to you by the letter V. All right, so let's begin with our first set of characters, the villains. All right, the villains are hooded strangers operating mysteriously in the shadows. They're demons from hell, mythical beasts. We give them names that imply power and charisma. They are the Lazarus Group, Nemesis Kitten, Fancy Bear, Midnight Blizzard, Wizard Spider, Volt Typhoon. We don't, unfortunately, call them Scrawny Nuisance or Weak Weasel or Feeble Ferret or my personal favorite, Doofus Dingo. Nope. We talk about them almost in hushed tones of awe. They are advanced persistent threats. They use sophisticated exploits or the dreaded 0 day. You know, sometimes it feels like the message is,
you, mere mortal, you are no match for these powerful villains alone.
But to be clear, these villains are just that. They are villains. They were evil yesterday, they are evil today, and they will be evil tomorrow. And while some do invest resources in developing novel exploits, most of the time they are using the same old vulnerabilities, and sometimes they just get lucky. These villains do not have superpowers, and we should not treat them like they do. But you know, we do. We glamorize them, and what's worse, we actually blame our second set of characters. Yes, the victims. The victims, who screwed up. You know, in a twist of fate, we often lay the responsibility for security at the feet of those who, while not entirely blameless, are probably the least responsible character in this story. When a company gets hacked, we often vocalize our disbelief. They didn't implement the basic security protections.
How could they?
Woo! So, despite decades of public service advisories, countless cybersecurity alerts, endless mitigation guidance, villains are still able to compromise victims for not patching their software, or those victims who didn't enroll in multi-factor authentication. And the reasoning goes, if they had just patched their software, if they had just implemented MFA. And sometimes when a ransomware attack occurs, we are very quick to say, oh, it's because an employee downloaded a malicious file or got phished into giving up their password. But let me be clear. Human error can only ever be the starting point for an investigation, never its conclusion. It is the proximate cause, not the root cause. All right, I will, Frankie. Human error can only ever be the starting point for an investigation, never its conclusion. It is the proximate cause, not the root cause. Now, to get closer to the root cause, we have to set aside our villains and set aside our victims and talk about our third set of characters, the vendors. Okay. All right, so here we are at Black Hat, one of the biggest cybersecurity conferences in the world. And you can walk the floor. You can find out how to protect yourself from the villains, how not to become a victim. But we have to admit that the cybersecurity industry was established to fix a problem created by another set of vendors. I'm talking about the technology vendors who develop the software that powers our daily lives. The vendors that develop the software that underpins the critical infrastructure that we rely upon every hour of every day for power, for water, for transportation, for communication, for healthcare, for finance, and so much more. Those vendors arguably created the cybersecurity industry. Yes, we have a multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity industry because for decades, technology vendors have been allowed to create defective, insecure, flawed software. Software that prioritized speed to market and cool features over security, therefore requiring cybersecurity solutions to be bolted on. And as we found out last month in the massive IT outage, cybersecurity vendors themselves are not immune to these issues of software quality and design. And that event just reinforced how ubiquitous software is and just how much we depend on it working properly. But you know, we have unwittingly allowed this situation. We have actually normalized it. We have bought into the myth of the software vulnerability as an inevitable act of nature. It's like a monsoon or a tornado or a hurricane. We are powerless to prevent these unpredictable acts of God. All we can do is just respond as rapidly as possible. But you know, that's not right. Frankly, it's bullshit. Let me take you back to 2007. In that year, MITRE published a white paper. It was called Unforgivable Vulnerabilities, and it laid out criteria for classes of defect that would be considered unforgivable for being both easily found and easily exploited. So these were products that didn't consider security at all. MITRE called them canaries in a coal mine, beacons of systematic disregard for secure development processes, products with vulnerabilities that never should have seen the light of day. And what do you think was at the top of this list? Well, it was memory safety violations and coding weaknesses leading to cross-site scripting and SQL injection and directory traversal. Now, 16 years later, in 2023, MITRE published another white paper. And this one was called Stubborn Weaknesses. And what do you think was at the top of that list? Memory safety violations and coding weaknesses leading to cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and directory traversal. And while some on this list were not as egregious as the ones in 2000, a lot of them were. And at this point in time, beacons of systematic disregard for secure development processes should probably be considered negligent. And let's be clear, the vulnerabilities on this list, including ones that are on our known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, the KEV catalog, they are not jaw-dropping innovations. They are not the product of hundreds of brilliant researchers spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Nope. They are the golden oldies, the same classes of defect that we have known about for decades and that we've known how to solve at scale for years. You know, Mark Twain once said, history does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. But not in this case. In the world of software, history is repeating itself all the frickin' time. From the scourge of ransomware attacks devastating businesses around our country to intrusions into our most sensitive critical infrastructure by adversary nations, these villains are just compromising victims using the same old vulnerabilities. We wouldn't accept such lingering defects in any other context. Why are we so complacent in the world of software? I mean, the truth is, it's the technology vendors that are the characters directly responsible for creating the products that open the doors for villains to attack victims. And we really have to acknowledge that. You know, instead of calling it a vulnerability, which really diffuses responsibility, we really should call it a product defect, because that names the problem much more directly, and it reinforces how important it is for technology vendors to design and develop and test and deliver software specifically focused on driving down dramatically the number of exploitable defects. And instead of blaming a victim for not patching their software, why aren't we asking, why did that product need so many urgent patches? The bottom line is we need to demand more. We need to demand more of ourselves, and we need to demand more of the technology vendors as customers of technology. Why? Because despite transformational progress in catalyzing collaboration between the federal government and the private sector and the hacking community and the research community and academia, despite the fact that CEOs and boards and business leaders are increasingly treating cyber risk as a core business risk and embracing corporate cyber responsibility as a matter of good governance, despite programs like Secure Our World to highlight the importance of basic cyber hygiene, despite efforts to raise awareness, like through the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog or through reporting coming out of the Cybersecurity Review Board. And despite the fact that, yes, we as a community are stronger and better connected than ever before, despite the multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity industry, despite all of that, we still have a multi-trillion-dollar global cybercrime problem. So, what do? Do we give up? No. Do we give up? No. Do we give up? No. Do we let the villains win? No. Do we accept that we're all victims? No. Do we let the vendors off the hook? Do we accept that software is an inevitable act of God? All right, I was hoping for a little more enthusiasm, but we'll get there. No, 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 we can't. We won't. I have a dream. of a world where ransomware is a shocking anomaly, a world where damaging software vulnerabilities are as infrequent as the plane crash, a world where cybersecurity is as obsolete as the beeper.
Cybersecurity? We don't need no stinking cybersecurity.
Okay, all right. I'm kidding, mostly. We all have job security for a very long time, but I do believe we can make attacks much more difficult and much less profitable for the bad guys. This is a really hard problem, but it's not an impossible problem. We got ourselves into this mess. We can get ourselves out. We just need a shared vision. And by the way, it is not rocket science. We can look to other industries for what they possess that the world of software inexplicably does not. The vast majority of other industries, they track defects. They track incidents that cause harm so they can specifically reduce risk. Risk to driving on the highway, risk to getting on an airplane. The vast majority of other industries are obsessed with continuous improvement and with driving down classes of defect. But somehow, that's just not the way it is, even though businesses know that recurring defects are in fact bad for business. It somehow doesn't apply to the world of software. I mean, just look at some standard contract language for when you purchase software.
Software and our affiliates, resellers, distributors, and vendors make no warranties, express or imply guarantees or conditions with respect to your use of the services. You understand that use of the services is at your own risk, and that we provide services on as is basis of all faults and as available. You bear the entire risk of using the services.
Sign right here.
That's real language. Would you buy a car entirely at your own risk? Would you get on an airplane entirely at your own risk? No, but somehow we accept this in the software that powers our daily lives, the software that underpins the critical infrastructure that we rely upon every hour of every day. You know, we have unfortunately fallen prey to the myth of techno-exceptionalism.
We are smart. We know more than you. Tech is very, very common. We have nothing to learn from the world's automotive safety, the aviation industry, or medical safety. They are different. Our technology moves too fast. We are not affected by the universal forces that affect all other industries. We have never measured the cost of secure software, but we can assure you that it would absolutely, positively cost too much. Users know it as an immutable truth, so please, stop bothering us, and let us go back to our very complicated and important world.
The truth is, my friends, we don't have a cybersecurity problem. We have a software quality problem. We don't need more security products. We need more secure products. All right, I will. We don't have a cybersecurity problem. We have a software quality problem. We don't need more security products. We need more secure products. Now, last year, we launched the Secure by Design initiative specifically to address this issue. It laid out a bold vision for a future where technology manufacturers, technology vendors, develop, design, test, and deliver software specifically focused on dramatically driving down the number of exploitable defects, software that was resistant to the most common attacks. And while I like to call this the Secure by Design revolution, it is by no means a revolutionary concept. We have known forever that security as a foundational principle would make us more secure. But now is the time to do something about it. It's the time for us all to become the last set of characters, the heroic characters, the visionaries. Now, a year after we launched Secure by Design, the movement is gaining momentum, bolstered by nearly 20 international and federal partners and dozens of technology vendors that have signed the Secure by Design pledge, committing to making progress in 7 key Secure by Design areas, including increasing use of MFA, decreasing use of default passwords, and reducing or eliminating entirely whole classes of vulnerabilities. We started out with 68 technology vendors at RSA, the original signers of the pledge, and we're now, 3 months later, nearly up to 200 visionary vendors who are committed to a more secure technology ecosystem. And we're working with those vendors to track progress and report transparently so we can see how we are driving down risk to the technology ecosystem. But you know, I should step back and say we are by no means the first to talk about Secure by Design, and we are by no means the only thought leaders in this space. There are actually visionaries among us who for decades have been laying the framework, laying the foundation for the Secure by Design revolution. They've been challenging the status quo to build safer products. I'm thinking about folks like Josh Oz and Sarah Grand from the Internet Security Research Group who've been spearheading efforts to rewrite critical open source projects in memory-safe programmable languages. I'm thinking about authors like Kelly Shortridge and David Rice and Scott Shapiro, whose books have brought attention to the importance of Secure by Design. I'm thinking about folks like Bruce Schneier and Craig Newmark. Bruce has been talking about Secure by Design as long as I can remember. And Craig is putting his money where his mouth is in making the case to the American people on the importance of cybersecurity as a shared responsibility. I'm thinking of security leaders like Christoph Kern from Google, like Dwizzle, David Weston from Microsoft. I'm thinking of academic thought leaders like Professors Gene Camp from Indiana University Bloomington, Jean Blair from West Point, Ming Chow from Tufts. These visionaries and others among us have been building and championing development frameworks that make secure coding the path of least resistance. Now just imagine you're about to create an unforgivable vulnerability, and your development framework tells you,
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
but to make this vision a reality, we all have to play a role. We all have to be visionaries. Of course, technology vendors can have a transformative impact in building and delivering products that are secure by design. Members of Congress can also have a transformative impact by establishing a software liability regime with an articulable standard of care and safe harbor provisions for those vendors that innovate responsibly, prioritizing secure development processes. But all of us can have a transformative impact by calling for products that are secure by design, therefore advancing the secure by design movement through secure by demand. You have to have both the supply side and the demand side. And the truth is that organizations that procure and deploy software, which is virtually all organizations, can play a leading role in advancing secure by demand. Leaders at all levels should be asking more from their technology vendors, asking them if they sign the pledge, asking them if in fact they're prioritizing security in all of the products. Companies and leaders should be using their purchasing power and voting with their procurement dollars. And to this end, just earlier this week, we released Secure by Demand guide for software customers. And it has questions that organizations can ask of technology vendors to find out how they're prioritizing product security. And just last week, we released a Secure by Demand focused software acquisition guide for government enterprise customers so that we, the feds, are eating our own dog food. Collectively, we need to demand more. We need to demand more of technology vendors to ensure we're advancing the secure by design revolution. We need to demand that vendors sign the pledge, that they prioritize security. I urge everybody in this room, check out our Secure by Design website, check out the pledge, check out the guidance. Use your voice, play an active role, use your purchasing power to make products secure by design by demanding it. Together, we can seize the moment, we can seize the opportunity to recast the villains and the victims, to demand much, much more from the vendors and all be visionaries. That is the way we're going to change the trajectory of the story of cybersecurity for the better. And maybe someday in the future, we can write my rollout altogether. It is my strong hope that as a community, we do the hard work to make products so secure that cybersecurity jobs like mine just go away. But until then, we have our work cut out for us. So let's go. Thank you.